Hi, I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Texas. I also have a level 2 certification in trauma treatment, and the treatment of narcissistic trauma abuse is also another certification that I have. Today, I just wanted to introduce the dark triad, which I know I've discussed in previous episodes, but I really just wanted to get into the first part of it. It exists of three parts, obviously. It exists of narcissism, psychopathology, and Machiavellianism. Let's start off with basically what I've been focusing on this channel since I started it, which is narcissism. Narcissism is characterized by a lot of different traits, but really they're pretty easy to kind of summarize. They might show up in different ways depending on the type of narcissist they are, which I'll get into that later on in this channel. There's so much to talk about regarding personality disorders. They're quite interesting. But they can also be quite damaging. So let's talk about narcissism and the damage that it can cause. So narcissists are very, very characterized by lack of empathy. They have a lower empathy center in the brain, depending on how severe their narcissism is. But they are born with brains that are different. And also they're raised in households that are different because the people that they get their DNA from have lower empathy centers. So they tend to be raised by people who also are not empathetic, who are more focused on their own needs rather than their children's needs. And so that's why a lot of people who present with narcissistic personality traits will have come from abusive or neglectful or emotionally encroaching, boundaryless families. It's a generational thing, but you have a choice to change your behavior or to not. And that's where really narcissism comes in. Yes, it's a personality trait, but you can decide to make a change. You can learn how to show empathy. You might not feel it, but you can learn how to show it. So, lack of empathy. Low neuroticism, which we'll also talk about how that's correlated with other parts of the dark triad to create a very interesting type of narcissist I'd like to call a covert narcissist. But if you have low neuroticism, it means you really don't cry a lot. You don't have depression. You don't show your anxiety in the form of panic attacks. The only emotion you tend to show is anger. But you definitely have all that going on inside, but it comes out very placid, very calm. They seem very collected. And oftentimes most counselors who don't know what they're looking at and who are not familiar with the treatment of narcissistic abuse and what narcissistic abuse looks like in couples therapy actually do a lot of harm, because the person who's being abused seems very dysregulated. They're crying, they're all over the place. And then the person who's doing the abusing, very calm, very cool, very calculated. So who are you going to think is the one who's really the problem if you're not a skilled professional in treating narcissistic abuse in couples? You're going to think it's the narcissist because they seem put together. So that's why if you do not have a specialty in narcissistic trauma, please, as a therapist, refer out. It's unethical to treat people who have narcissistic traits or who you think might in couples therapy, because you could do a lot of harm. I've seen it in so many of my clients, almost universally. So please, practitioners, let's do more help and less harm. So next, let's talk about basically a need for control. So they need to be the ones in control. I'm right, you're wrong. If you don't agree with me, you're on the other side as me, you're my enemy. So it's very black and white thinking. It's all good, all bad, I'm all right, you're all wrong. And if you don't agree with them or go along with them, you will be paying the penalty. So that's the next thing. They often use threats. They could be subtle. They could be direct. They could be even non-spoken. We talked about that, I think, in my last video about gaslighting. But they'll use threats to basically instill fear in their victims to say, if you do this and if you go against me, I'm going to make you pay. And they want you to feel afraid. And honestly, be afraid. Be very afraid. If they're a covert narcissist, they're incredibly toxic and incredibly good at hiding who they really are to the world and to you. Lying. That's another thing narcissists do. By omission, often, they just won't tell you information that you need to know. Or they'll tell half-truths. Like, they'll tell part of the story that makes them sound good and you sound bad, but they won't tell the whole story. Or they'll just basically lie, make stuff up. They'll also set you up to look like you're the one who's crazy by doing something to trigger you and then recording your response. So then they can play it for other people later, which goes on to a next one. Campaign, basically smear campaigning. So it's a campaign to ruin your reputation, because if you're the one with the problem, it couldn't be them. So they're very, very concerned with reputation. They're very also concerned with having superiority. That's the control thing too, right? Oh, sorry, my therapy cat Luna's going to join us today. But they're very concerned about, I'm up here, you're down here, so you're going to listen to me. And once they start feeling that loss of control, ooh, look out, because they're pretty nasty. They'll do just about anything before they actually acknowledge that they've lost control of you. Even if they don't want you anymore, they don't want anyone else to play with you. So they're going to make sure they have control over you. So another thing that they typically will do is they'll criticize, which they'll put you down. It could be direct or indirect. They'll tell you how you're not doing things right to make you question your own sense of self. They also will gaslight you. They'll say things or do things and then deny they said or did them. Or they'll accuse you of doing things that you didn't do. It's very, very insidious. It's called crazy making. And they will make you look like you are the one with the problem. And they'll convince you of it. So it's basically a purposeful manipulation of your reality, the victims, to make you question if you're actually seeing things right, or if you're going crazy and maybe you need to adopt their reality, which leads to a loss of sense of self, because then they can control and manipulate you and have superiority over you. So those are just some really, really clear signs. Stonewalling is another way that they control. They can go silent, emotional neglect, and basically pretending like your needs don't matter, ignoring your needs, yelling at you, name calling, put downs. All of those things combined are basically just the narcissist. So I'm sure that some of you can identify with certain ones of these. This is not a comprehensive list, but also every narcissistic person doesn't display all of these traits. They could just be a high conflict person who has a few of these traits, but they're very prominent. Also, people with narcissism believe that they're special. They're smarter than everyone else. They know better. They're superior to everyone, and they should be treated as such. They like recognition and attention. So that's another thing to look out for. They also like to play the victim whenever they're actually the ones doing the victimizing. So victim blaming. I hope that this was helpful for you. And also, one other thing, just before I forget, blame speak is something that narcissists love to use. So it's not my fault. I acted this way because of you. So they refusal to take responsibility for their own actions. I think that I provided a pretty comprehensive list of what narcissism looks like, but if anybody has any additional traits to add below, please do. I hope this was helpful, and we'll discuss Machiavellianism next time. Thank you. Have a good night.